Okay, so what you see again is you have these tire marks in the earth. They're digging up the earth, and this is what causes the vehicle to roll over. And we can see the two, what I believe, I haven't seen the vehicle, but what I believe is that we have the left front digging in over here. I'm walking right next to that tire. And then we probably have the left rear digging in over here. And surprisingly, it just missed this utility pole. There's just some little dirt marks on the utility pole, but not very much, just grazed past that utility pole. And so what happens is once this earth gets dug up, obviously it gets thrown around. And so if we kind of look and see right here is where the rollover occurred. Okay, you can see right here, the tire marks stopped. The gouging stopped right here, and it stopped over there. So the vehicle was sliding sideways, and this is where it just tipped over on its left side. And then you'll see the first roll down there before we get to that cone. And by the way, the cone in the background there is where the final rest position of the vehicle is. And of course, my vehicle is adjacent to that. So what you typically see then, you see all this dirt and grass getting tossed over here, for example, on this little laneway that leads to the field. You see some of that earth. It's just all over the place. And then, of course, we just talked about the vehicle getting thrown up in the air. Let me turn the cameras around. And you should see from where we just were that you can see the point where the vehicle tipped over on its left side and became airborne. And then you can see over there in the background where my cones are, where the tire marks are at the asphalt edge. So where I'm standing right now is where the vehicle is airborne. There are no marks in this field. By the way, the earth here is very hard packed, and so minor contacts would be more difficult to see. But certainly what happens is when we come to about this point, we see the first obvious contact here in the field. And I'm standing here with my foot at probably the front end of the vehicle. And over here is probably the rear of the vehicle. So I think what we have is probably just a lateral roll, sideways roll, and this is the first contact. The first contact is usually on the opposite side of the roof. Nothing is ingrained in stone, but normally the first contact is if you're rotating over your left side, the first contact will be with the right side roof rail. And so unfortunately this person was ejected and fatally injured, and he was probably out in the field here somewhere. But that's often what happens, and unfortunately sometimes there is only a partial ejection from a vehicle like this, and unfortunately the driver is partially out of the vehicle. When it comes down, it makes its first contact, and unfortunately that person is then crushed by his own vehicle. And that's one of the fallacies we talk about. Well, we get ejected and we get totally ejected. No, that's not how we really get our fatal injuries. It's very often because we get crushed by our own vehicle while we're partially ejected. So what we have here now is a second area of contact, and this is probably the rear part of the vehicle. Why? I don't know exactly, but certainly there's red lens material right around this location. So I hazard to guess that it's probably the rear. It's made just one contact before coming to rest over there by that cone. And so we come to the cone, and this is not very typical actually, because when we come to a final rest position of a vehicle, it's pretty obvious. In other words, there's a lot of debris and fluid and everything around that vehicle where it comes to rest. But in this case, I'm not seeing anything. The only thing I'm sure about the final rest position is simply, you can see the towing evidence here. If you look at this cone and you look toward the roadway, you can see how the vehicle was towed out. You can see the grass has been trampled over there, and the direction of the trampling, you can see the scraping here in the edge of the field, and you can see where the vehicle got taken just in front of my vehicle. out onto the road. So we know that this is the final rest position. There are some markings. I'm not going to say there's none, but certainly there are some markings. I'm just going to kind of put the one camera still for a second and show you that there is, some evidence. Kind of darkening is what I would be looking for, kind of in this area. Maybe an oil stain, which is very typical for final rest positions. Small oil stain over here. And, unfortunately, we do have a button here, for example, a torn out button. Maybe from the individual, and maybe something from the engine oil, for example. A little handle for checking the engine oil. So this does look like the final rest position. So I would suggest to you that if you're driving down a country road, pay attention. Certainly pay attention to these gravel shoulders, and understand that most of these fatalities are occurring from some kind of a loss of control. And not only necessarily from your vehicle, but from someone else's. And you may simply be minding your own business and driving properly, but someone loses control and actually collides with you. So that's all I wanted to say, and we'll just stop for now.